Association fibers are axons of neurons that connect different gyri of the brain, so hills. These are neurons that are completely contained within the brain, and also they're all myelinated for fast transmission. So there are short association fibers that connect adjacent gyri, and these fibers would be lightly myelinated. So these are some of those short fibers. If we need to connect gyri that are not adjacent, then the neuron's axon will be more heavily myelinated. So let's say that the premotor cortex is trying to consolidate motor output for you to cross the street. And the premotor cortex needs information about where you are standing in relation to a curb, and the visual association area has this information. So the premotor cortex may also need some information about the beeping in the crosswalk sign. And all of these pieces of information, visual, audio, they all get consolidated into association fibers that then all reach to the premotor cortex. So you may have something going on like this. Well, it wouldn't be like that, but something like that. Actually, all right, I'm going to correct it. This would use the commissural fiber to come over to the left. Projection fibers are much more profuse in the brain. They connect what are called lower, like physically inferior areas of the brain to areas more superior in the brain. So, for example, again, the premotor cortex is connected to the cerebellum by very highly myelinated fibers. And those are projection fibers. We could also draw them here, and we could also draw some of them here. There are two large-scale structures that projection fibers make. There's something called an internal capsule, which is a whole bunch of projection fibers that connect the thalamus, which is this area right here. They connect the thalamus with the basal nuclei. So there's tons of fibers here and fibers here. And if we were to draw that here, this would be the thalamus. And the basal nuclei are pretty much all around it. So again, we could draw some thalami, or the thalamus here, and the basal nuclei have fibers that are all around. So this internal capsule is like the fibers are very close to each other, right? Contained within a little like pipe or tubing. But these areas, the basal nuclei, they control really precise movements. So they need really quick communication. And that's why these fibers, even though very short, they are myelinated. There's also another collection of fibers which we call the corona radiata. And these are the fibers that radiate out into the cerebrum of the brain. Coronal means crown, and radiata basically means radiating, right? The corona radiata, it's just an anatomical name describing this shape. So what does the corona radiata do? It's part of the reticular activating system that maintains your consciousness. Remember? Pun intended. The reticular activating system is this collection of neurons deciding if you can study in the cafeteria or if you're like me and you need a sensory deprivation unit to study. So we have seen this term before, commissural, right? There were commissurals in the spinal cord that connected the left to the right side of the cord, and the same applies here. There is an anterior commissure, which are these lines right here, because this is anterior on the brain. And there's a posterior commissure, which are these lines right here. So the anterior and posterior commissures are myelinated neurons. and they cross from the left to the right hemisphere. In the spinal cord, they were not myelinated. When we dissect the brains in the physical lab, one of the first things I ask students to do is to kind of pull apart the hemispheres like this and to peer down into that longitudinal fissure. And what this does is it opens up the fissure to the point where you can see the anterior commissure right here. You can actually see the white fibers going from the left to the right hemisphere. The corpus callosum is a commissural fiber. It's just a really big commissural fiber, and it's used by the brain a lot, so it's worthy to mention. There are many theories about the corpus callosum, how cutting it can reset the brain to do certain things, like reset certain types of dyslexia. This structure you see here highlighted in purple, that is the corpus callosum. And as you can see, this here is the thalamus, and the corpus callosum is superior to the thalamus. And these two structures I'm drawing right here would also be the thalamus. So when in doubt, if there's something that says, what is the most important or what is the largest commissural fiber in the brain, the corpus callosum is most likely the answer. I'm not saying that it is the answer. Don't quote me, but it's most likely the answer.